Welcome to Better Daily Life, where we are moving forward 1% better every single day. Download the app and supercharge your journey at betterdaily.life. Now it's time to ditch facts and get facts with your host and my dad, Alex Van Houten.
What is up, Betterment family? This is Alex Van Houten in Better Daily Live. Happy Thursday. It is Word Thursday, and the word today is bread. I'm very excited to bring this word to you. Good morning, Joel. Good to see you this morning, man. Thanks for joining me. Bread. Now, I'm not trying to make you hungry with this word. I'm actually going to dive pretty deeply into it. However, what's really cool about this word is it's kind of like the word chickens. It's not the same. Bread and chicken, I guess, probably could go together pretty well. But I do like toast with my eggs. This word is a wild word because it is so tied to so many different metaphors and so much etymology and history that there's a bunch of different ways to use it. So I'm very excited to explore one of those ways with you today. Now, bread, when I say bread, you picture bread. I don't know if you were a Wonder Bread kid growing up, or perhaps you had a wonderful family history of those who make bread in the house. There's nothing like a fresh baked loaf of bread. That smell. Oh man. I know, I'm making you hungry. I know it's breakfast. Remember, earn your carbs, all right? That's another message on this podcast. You don't even need me to define bread for you. But just in case you do, in the English language, we generally think of it as a morsel, usually composed of wheat, that can be baked into loaves. And bread can be a bunch of different things. It can be barley, and it can be rye, and it can be wheat, and you can be one of those gluten-free bread people and make it out of tapioca flour. And I did do a gluten-free thing for a while, and there's a bunch of different breads there, and let me tell you, gluten really makes bread worth eating. You don't really want gluten-free bread very often. But that's the simple definition, but the etymology goes way back. Why? Well, gosh, man, however many years ago that human beings created this agricultural technology to where we could actually raise grains, grind them into a flour of some sort, and then make bread. I make matzah bread with my Bible study once a semester so that we can do communion together. And what matzah bread is, it's the most simple bread. It's basically like a cracker, but really the only ingredients are flour, oil, and water. And you can sprinkle some salt in there. Flour, oil, water. It's amazing how simple it is to make. So if you have flour of some sort, you can make bread, and it's not hard to do so. I'll tell you this first. In our house, my wife has started making sourdough bread. I guess that's an Arkansas thing. She gets more Arkansas every year. It's really sweet. And I love her more for it. Something about these Arkansas girls. If you're unmarried and you're looking, come to Arkansas. We'll find you a lady. If you're unmarried dude, then come to Arkansas. We'll find you a lady. Anyway, so they make sourdough bread. And what sourdough bread is, as the name implies, sourdough. It's dough that has been made through a fermentation process. And it's really good. It's really good bread. And the way you make that is you have to have a culture. Culture as in a colony of bacteria called yeast that is alive and working. So you take this colony of bacteria and you add some sugar to the bacteria so that the bacteria can eat the sugar and ferment it. And so you have a fermentation process. Gas is produced as a result. If you've ever opened like a bottle of kombucha from the store, which is a fermented tea, there's gas on top of it. Right? Then the same thing happens with a sourdough culture. You add your bacteria to the colony, you put some sugar in there, you let it bubble and do its thing for a little while, and then you open the can, and there's gas on top. So it's fermenting. It's going through the process of metabolism. You're doing the same thing, by the way, not fermented necessarily, but when you go, that's the carbon dioxide created in every mitochondrial organelle in your body. It's actually burning through fuel and creating carbon dioxide. So it's a very similar process. Anyway, so you have these little bacterial colonies, and you mix them with flour and you mix them with water and you mix them with a little oil. And it's a really hard, like, you got to start and make this big dough ball. Now, why am I telling you this? Well, there's a process by which, like when you look at bread, it has little holes, little compartments in it. Like a good piece of bread has little holes and compartments in it. That's because every one of those little compartments was a little yeast colony that produced some carbon dioxide and spread the dough around it, right? And made a little pocket of carbon dioxide as it metabolized the sugar and makes little holes. And if you look at a piece of bread, you can see that. The smaller the hole, the smaller the yeast colony, right? Now, commercially produced bread doesn't necessarily do that, right? You can use Sprite, for instance, as the carbon dioxide's in the water. If you look at a piece of Wonder Bread, I'm picking on Wonder Bread, but if you look at a piece of Wonder Bread, like, those little holes weren't made by yeast colonies. That was made by carbon dioxide bubbling. So do fresh homemade sourdough. Because that's just a replica. Anyway, the point is you leave the dough and bubbles up and the dough gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's called leavening. It's actually called leavening. That's a biblical word. And I was reading in the New Testament recently where Jesus was teaching his disciples, and Jesus is an amazing figure, right? And he shows love and mercy and grace and compassion and teaching to a whole subset of individuals that have been completely marginalized from society. Tax collectors, prostitutes, the sick and the lame and the deaf and dumb, right? And the blind. Like he ministers to these people with just an amazing amount of compassion and grace. However, he also has a bone to pick with another section of society that oftentimes is called the Pharisees and the Sadducees. And he goes toe-to-toe with them regularly. Like, some of the most brutal language in the Bible is Jesus talking to the Pharisees. At one point, he says something like, "You're like a brood of vipers. And everybody's life you can make better, you make worse, and it would be better if you weren't here at all." Something like that. It's rough, man. And he says to his disciples, after having one spat with the Pharisees over whether or not his disciples are washing their hands before they eat their bread, he says to his disciples, "Beware of the leavening of the Pharisees." And they're like, "Is he saying this because we didn't bring bread?" And Jesus is like, "Guys, wow. Like, why do I have to keep explaining myself to you?" Because we're thick-skulled, Lord. Help us out here. Because he is using bread as a metaphor and the leavening process as a metaphor to describe the heart of people who take so much pride in what they think they know that they miss out on the love of God for themselves and they miss out on the love of God for the people around them. And he's telling his disciples, you watch out for that teaching, you watch out for that leavening, because what happens is a little bit of yeast, a little bit of leavening will fill the entire dough. Similarly, with us, a little tiny piece, just a tiny piece of the pride and the arrogance, where we think we have it all figured out, and we think other people suck because they don't. Whatever that is, it leavens the whole dough ball. It can change you on the inside in ways you didn't realize and didn't understand. He says, beware of that. And his disciples don't quite understand that yet. But this shows up in the early church in Acts and in the New Testament. I bring this to you to say two things. First, it's very, very interesting that bread is such a lovely metaphor for so many things because we all know it. We've all had it in one form or fashion. There are places in the world where their primary source of calories is bread, not the cruddy Wonder Bread. The real bread, the good stuff. And they know, they understand what that means. And I love how Jesus through the Gospels, and I think this is one of the reasons that even people who aren't particularly heavy into the Christian faith will still appreciate things that Jesus had to say because they can understand it, they can relate to it. Beware of the tiny little teachings, the tiny little spirits, the tiny little ethos that can change you on the inside in a negative way. And before you realize it, it's filled your whole life. It's filled your whole body. It's filled your whole mind. Social media can be like that leavening. You find yourself on your phone doing stuff when you should be present with your children. You find yourself stuck in a virtual world and looking for things that you don't even know what you're looking for because a little leavening can ruin the whole dough. But the other reason I bring this up to you, I was researching the word bread, because I'm interested in words. I think that's very interesting. It's the Hebrew version of bread that has the longest etymology. Lechem is the transliteration, Lechem. Lechem means bread. It's not just bread, though. It's like your livelihood. It's like your sustenance. It's the thing that lets you live to fight another day, so to speak. And that was something that I thought was really interesting. Lechem, the word bread, is derived from the root word lachem, Lachem. Lechem, bread, sustenance, livelihood, right? But lachem is to fight, to defend, to protect. And I thought this was really cool because the root word for the word bread is to fight, and you're like, well, how are those two things related? Well, one, I have to say that if you're gonna have bread, you gotta earn your carbs, man. Fighting's hard work and it's short intensity, and you do a lot when you fight, all right? But jokes aside, you heard me say just a second ago, to live to fight another day. That's kind of a tongue-in-cheek expression, but it's actually kind of true. Jesus said in his prayer, "Give us this day our daily bread," meaning, Lord, sustain us. Give us our livelihood. Give us the opportunity to have another day. But while we're at it, perhaps fuel us to fight the battles of the day, to fight the leavening of teachings that are bad for us, to fight for our families, to fight for our livelihoods, to be on guard and protective of the things that we've been made stewards of. Lechem. The word bread does not just mean the little white slice that you put butter and jelly on. Tied up in the word itself is a gratitude and responsibility for the opportunity to live today, to make the most of it, and to understand the good work that you have in front of you today. You have good work in front of you today. And maybe you've eaten more than your fair share of bread, and you're particularly well fueled to make it happen, or you haven't, but you have good work in front of you to do today. And that's something else that Jesus said. There was a time when he was very, very hungry, and his disciples went into town to grab some food, and he had a powerful conversation with an individual that needed it. And they come out of town, and they go to give him some bread, and he says, no, I have bread that you don't know anything about. And they're like, what, did he stop at Arby's on the way? Like, what are you talking about? Where's the food? If you got a snack, share it with us, Jesus. Like, that would be nice. I thought we were hungry here. And he says, my bread, my sustenance, my livelihood is to do the will of him who sent me. You have a calling. You have something important that you're here for. And I don't care if you believe it or not. I'm telling you right now, you have a calling, something special and important that you're here for. And whether it's fueled by Wonder Bread or not, my hope for you is that you find that fight inside of you to take that challenge on every single day. Give us this day our daily bread. It's a cool word. Guys, this has been Alex Van Houten in Better Daily Live. Thank you so much for joining me for Word Thursday. Maybe I'll cover bread in a more sports-like context sometime soon, but that's what was on my mind this week. Until next time, guys, it's just 1%. You got this.
Thank you for joining us for your 1% better. Be you, just better, in mind, body, and spirit. Go to betterdaily.life, download our app, and check out our 5-star coaching resources. We all have a cross to carry. It's lighter when we do it together. Go to betterdaily.life today.